Hi, everyone. I was going to create a video trying to show you how to run this sample distance calculator program. And then I realized, well, some of you may benefit from seeing how I change. What I've done is I've taken something from an online course. There's no online course that was in Java, and so I'm going to pop it into Python. I've already started to convert some of it, and then I realized, oh, this could be beneficial for some of you to see how it works. So we're taking a look to see if we can receive input of both latitude and longitude, and then from that, those coordinates, we're going to apply a formula that will allow us to calculate the distance between them on Earth, and that would sort of be the considering the fact that there's an arc on the Earth, so it's sort of a special formula. So we're going to start off with a series of print statements. Print quotation. So just to get it across several lines, the output now, I'm just doing a test run. When entering latitude and longitude, please use degrees. For example, 43 degrees, 40 minutes would be entered as 43.67. And that's because 40 minutes is 40 out of 60 minutes. There are 60 minutes in an hour. So that's how latitude and longitude works. So 40 divided by 60 is 0.666 repeating, or 43.67. We were told to use positive values for north latitudes and west latitudes, and use negative values for south latitudes and east longitudes. So that's what our print statements are. And then what I did is I just included quotation marks here to because I wanted to run this. Boy, it's slow. Not sure why. The concept of what I'm doing though is the triple quotes allows me to document out a series of a bunch of code, and this other code was sort of in Java, and so I didn't want it to run because that would cause it to crash. I'm just going to stop this and try reloading my stop. I'm just going to try reloading the screen, and now I'll run it, and so that's what prints. So when I get rid of the triple quotes, then everything. So I've documented out information with triple quotes. So first thing is I'm going to add a comment, ask the user for the name of place one. I had a comment up here, print a warning message to the user about degrees. Another comment, ask the user for the name of place one. So place one is going to be my variable name. I don't need to declare it in Python. I'm going to use the input function. The input function receives as a parameter name of place one, and maybe I'll put a colon and a space. By default, it will the input function returns a string value, so whatever I type here will be assigned a string. I'm then going to get the latitude of place one, so get latitude. My input is equal to input. The input function can receive only one parameter, so this has got to be one parameter only. And so here we have a string. What is the this was across multiple lines. That's why it was like that. What is the latitude of? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the place one, which was a string. So if I said Kingston, what is the latitude of Kingston in degrees? And then I like to add a space at the end of that. So I'll put in that value, and that will be thrown into my input. Now the thing is that, as I said, input returns a string value, but I need to have that to be a numeric value. So from that, what I can do is I can take that my latitude one is going to become, I could put an integer, but of course latitude could have a decimal value, so that's going to become a float. So now my input has just been converted into a float. Note that I could have simply also in this function put float value, and that would take my input would now the input would return a string. Float would convert that to a float value, and so my input would become float. For simplistic purposes, some of you are new to Python, we're going to do it in two separate steps, but you'll see that from time to time. So latitude one is now a float of my input. And as a test, I'm just going to print out lat one. And then I'm going to document out the rest of the code and just see that my program's running. I'm indentation error. Yeah, that's got to be there. I'm constantly running my code. Okay, I put in 45, but because it was assigned a float value, that instantly adds a decimal place to it. So that seems to be working fine. I'm going to continue. Now I want to get the longitude. So comments in Python are with number signs. And I will now take my input, which is being used again. In Python, we use lowercase separated by underscore as opposed to Java, which uses the camel case. I'm going to grab an input. What is the, I don't need this over multiple lines. What is the longitude of place 1 in degrees? And I like to have a space afterwards. No semicolon. Now I'm going to take the longitude value and convert that into float of my input. No semicolon. Again, I think that worked fine, but I always like to test my code as I run. So yeah, another indentation error on ask the user. Where did I put that? Oh, because I haven't commented out all the rest of the code. Name of place, Kingston, 45, 22, 33, and I get 45.3 because I printed lat1 as opposed to lon1, but I'm going to believe that my code was fine there. Next, I'm asked to ask the user for the name of place 2. Replace that with a comment. And so place 2 is going to be an input statement. Name of place 2, colon with a space. And I'll get the latitude for that. My input, again, reusing the same thing because that's being converted instantly. So my input is going to be the input function. What is the latitude of place 2 in degrees with a space at the end? And now my latitude will become a float value of my input variable with no semicolon. I'm getting pretty confident. I'm testing my code a little bit less. My input, and what I'll do is after I've taken all these inputs, I will test my code. Input, what is the longitude of place 2 in degrees? And then longitude 2 will become a float of my input. And then what I'll do is to test my code, I'm going to print out all these variables. So I'm going to print lat1, lat2, lon1, lon2. Oh, and I need to comment out the rest of the code. And let's run it to make sure that it's functioning. Name, K, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Error, float is not defined. I spelled flout as opposed to float. Note that reserved words within Python are blue in this editor, so that should have been an indicator to me. Run it again. K, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoops, the name of place 2 is a 4. That's okay. And 2, 5, 3, and 6. So my code is working. Hooray. Now in Java, you would have to declare what your variables were beforehand, but we don't need to do that, just like I didn't declare what lon2 was going to be, because when I declare, basically the declaration takes place as soon as the assignment statement takes place. So lon2 is assigned a float value. Well, because of that, lon2 is not going to be float. I don't need to worry about that with distance. I don't need to declare it as anything. I'm going to say that my distance, this is the math portion, distance is equal to 6378.8 times math of a cos of math.sin. Wow, there's a lot. This is a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to, just for illustrative purposes, comment out the rest of that formula, and let's just see if this works. So I'm going to take distance. It's going to be this float value, 0.8, times this this math value, and let's run it. And lo and behold, we get an error. 952. What? I wonder if I don't understand why we're getting an error there. Why is it not liking my triple quotes? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I wonder. Oh. Yeah, this often happens in Python. The error actually occurred up here on line 32, but it didn't discover it until after here. It has to do with my open and close brackets. You can see this open bracket is closed with that one. I've not properly closed my brackets. I run this, name of place 1, A, 1, 2, place B, 3, 4, and now I'm getting an error. And it says it's a name error because math is not defined. So the way we want to be able to access the math library is we need to actually import it at the very beginning of our code. So it's available. I don't need access to the web. It's in the standard Python installation, but I need to import it, and it's a lowercase. So when I import math, what this does is it gives me access to all of the functions inside of the math library. So this is the Python docs. In order for me to access the ceiling function, I need to indicate that it's math.ceiling. The way this works is this is kind of a good idea, because if I happen to have a ceiling is equal to 45, I may have some variable called ceiling or a function called ceiling in my own code. This way it doesn't conflict with the functions that exist inside of the math library. And when you're importing other libraries, you may not know all the various functions that exist there. So to make sure that there's no sort of conflict, we have to reference that function via the name of the library itself. So now if I want to be able to calculate the ACOS of a value, I'm going to say that is from my math library, which I've imported, ACOS of math library.sine latitude. All right, and I'll just print out distance here. I know this isn't the correct formula, but I wanted to illustrate how we would use these functions to begin with. Okay, so we're getting some sort of a numeric response. It's the wrong formula, so now what I need to do is put in the correct formula. I've got a paper beside me with what that correct formula is. Remember, I added an extra bracket there, and I know that I removed an asterisk. So it's this. I'm just taking the math formula, the math of sine of that, plus the math, I'm using the cosine value, times the math of the cosine value of lat 2 times. So I don't need to know, I don't need to understand the subtract the longitude. I don't need to understand the algorithm itself, the math behind it. I trust that this is true. I note that as I've put in that last bracket that it's highlighted my first bracket, so probably I've gotten my pair of brackets correct. And just as a quick test, I'm now going to print out distance. Run. I need to comment out my code. Run. Subtract. Okay, I think I may have multiple. It's the issue of going across multiple lines. All right, let's try this. Invalid characters. Math equals math.sine lat 1 57 times math dot sine lat 2 plus math dot cos lat 1 times math dot cos lat 2 times math dot cos ln 2, and this is a syntax error, invalid character in identifier. We don't know which. It doesn't like that subtraction. Maybe I copied the code and maybe it's it was a hyphen as opposed to a subtraction sign. Name of place 1A, 1, 2, B, 3, 4, and I'm getting a math result, so that's good. So now I need to actually output this result in a slightly nicer display. So I'm going to display my output. Oops. Hopefully this is useful for those of you that are coming from Java. This is just a print, place 1, print. Like, look at the difference. Python, isn't it so much nicer? System.out.println. I think Python is just it's a great intro language. So print, this is going to be latitude of place 1 plus lat1. Okay, this is going to be a good example of how this is different from Python. We're going to run into some errors here. Let's take a look. I'm going to run this. Place 1A, latitude 2, 3, place B, 4, 5. Oh, and lo and behold, we do get an error. It's a type error. It says it must be a string, not a float. It's occurring on line 39. So line 39 here. Now, recognize that sometimes the editor doesn't recognize the error until the next line. So but the error says that that's a type error because it's expecting a string, not a float. It must be a string, not a float. Why is that? Well, the print method will accept numerous inputs, numerous parameters. So as a quick run, I can print multiple things. I can say, hello. One parameter, I can separate my parameter, I can throw in a 55, and I can throw in a plus 42, and then plus 42 equals, all right, that's a string, so I've got a string, I've got a number, which would be an integer, I've got another string, and then I could throw in a calculation of what 45 plus 42 is, and so right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters, and print will accept all 4 of those. If I run it, parameter 1, 45, hello, parameter 2 is 45, parameter 3 is plus 42 equals, parameter 4 is result 87. Input, however, but notice that these are 4 separate parameters and they're separated by commas. If I try to add this, we're going to get an error. Oh, and it's a type error because it must be a string, not an integer. Well, I'm trying to take a string, hello, and add to an integer. That doesn't make sense. I can add a string with a string, with a string and a string, right? That's just going to be HELLO 45 plus 42 equals 45 plus 42. Hello 45, right? Those are all strings. It doesn't recognize those as numbers. So if I'm trying to print out a mixture of both string, float, integers, I've got to separate them as separate parameters with commas. So that was the error that we were experiencing. So my print, so I'm going to separate that by a comma, or I'm going to separate these ones by commas. Note that when we separate by commas, it actually adds a space between each parameter. The other way would be if I wanted to be able to include it as an addition, I would have to convert my place 1, which is place 1 is going to work. Sorry, place 1 is a string, so that's going to work. And that would work here too, because place 1 is a string. So the error really was occurring at line 39. It's the issue that my latitude 1 is a float, and so I could not add that. It has to be a comma. If we run this now, A, 1, 2, B, 2, 3, latitude of A is 1.0. Now, the other option is I could put plus and convert my latitude value back to a string 1. Close my bracket. And now if I run it, I had 1, 2, 2, and 3. A, 1, 2, B, 2, and 3. My latitude of A is 1. So I'm getting the same result as a 1.0. Here I've converted it back to a string. Either method works. For the code that I publish, let's go with a separating it by a comma. All right, now we're just going to continue our print statements, and we'll be done. Comma. No semicolons. Case 2 is a string, that will work. Have to be a comma because it's not a string, that's a float. I'm going to print out longitude of place 2. That. Okay. And finally, our distance. Okay, so distance is a float. That will have to be a comma as the crow flies. Let's try running that. Get rid of our final comment. I'm hoping that this is going to work. Name of place A, values 2 and 3. Place B is 4 and 5. All right. Oh, I got to get rid of that extra stuff that I was printing. Place 1 is A, latitude of A is 2, longitude of A is 3. Place 2 is B, latitude of B is 4, longitude of B is 5. The distance is 314 kilometers as the crow flies. Notice that the use of the comma added a space. So in this particular case, I might want to remove the space at the end of the equal sign, or I can add these together, convert my distance to a string, and then that way, because there's no way of, because if I want my kilometers to be right up against the number, then I have to get rid of that space. So this will get rid of that space. If I try it now, A, 2, 3, B, we get the 314 kilometers. I don't know if it's better to have it. It might be a little bit easier to actually see a space inside of there. So let's go back with separating it by a comma. That will add the space for the kilometers, that's fine, but because it's adding a space here with the distance, I want to get rid of my space there. And that is our program. So I've actually got some values here for Thunder Bay. I'm told that the longitude of Thunder Bay is 48.41, and the latitude of that, sorry, and the longitude is 89.26. Name of place 2 is Duluth, and that has a latitude of 46.79 and a longitude of 92.1. I still forgot, I gotta get rid of those print statements, but the distance between them as the crow flies is 1,717. 46 point. I actually have different results from a printout that I have. I'm going to go through and check my code to see if, oh, I put 69 instead of 89. Let me run this one more time. I'm going to get rid of the print statement here. And I also think I would like to, I have print statements here. And I also just want to throw in a plain old print to separate off the code. So I'm expecting a result of 279.79. Let me try it one more time. Thunder Bay. I typed in the wrong number. 48.41, 89.26, 89.26, and Duluth, 46.79, and 92.1. 279, booyah. Actually, 2.22, I got a 0.79. I'm not too concerned about it. 46.79, 92.1, 89.26, 48.41. Okay. So there we have it. Hope that was helpful for some of you.